Recently, this box arrived on my doorstep. It is filled with Japanese hobby products that I have no idea how to use or what they're for. So today, we're gonna dig in and see if we can figure it out. If you spend any time on my channel, you probably know by now that I love testing out hobby products. And I've always had a little bit of an inkling to learn more about the different products used in parallel hobbies like Gundam or historical miniatures, things that they've used for years and might be more applicable to our miniature hobby. So when GodHand, a well-known Japanese hobby manufacturer, reached out because they're trying to expand their North American reach, I thought, sure, send me some weird stuff and I'll see if any of it works for me. When I first opened the box, there was one product inside that was familiar to me, and that was the GodHand clippers, what we probably know them for, really high-end sprue cutting clippers. And these ones seem kind of wimpy. It is their 3-star version of their clippers, meaning they're not as nice as the really expensive $70 or $80 pair. And in looking at the price of these online, they're in that $30 to $40 range. So I'm going to compare them to the Tamiya ones that are about that same price and see how they hold up. One thing I found interesting about these clippers is on the back, the instructions say they have a cutting capacity of 3 millimeters. It looks like the average width of the braces of a sprue is between 4 and 5 millimeters. So you're not actually going to want to use these clippers, or maybe any of your nice clippers, to cut along those, just the little bits that connect to your model. Now these seem extremely sharp. They've got 2 blades that cut, and they have a nice flat edge on one side so you can get right up to your model. They also have a pretty fine tip, not super small, but small enough to where I don't feel like there's areas I can't reach when cutting a model off the sprue. Overall, these seem very similar and quite nice compared to my usual Tamiya clippers. I will say I actually like the grips on these better than my Tamiya. They're a little bit softer and they're bigger, so I have a better kind of grip on the clippers compared to the little tiny ones on the Tamiya ones. Now my Tamiya clippers are a bit old, so they do feel a little bit duller, but honestly hardly even noticeable. And I can only really tell because I'm doing the comparisons side by side using one right after the other. But these seem to be very, very similar, and I think I'd be happy owning either one of these. But we didn't come here to talk about clippers. Clippers are not the weird and interesting things in that box, and we're going to start right on those. The first one is called a sanding sponge board, and it says right here it's brand new novelty item, sanding sponge board, exclamation point. Now, as you may know, one of my favorite hobby products are these little sanding sponges. They're great for getting into small areas, buffing down the little burrs or the mold lines. It works really, really great. These things kind of seem like the Big Daddy versions of the same product, and while they might still work great, they're huge. Now if you're doing a big monster model or a tank or something, this is probably super effective, but let's just see if it can actually do any of the fine work on the average size model. Now using the sanding stick on a larger area like the mold line that was running right down this cloak is really nice. Because it has a wide working area, it's really easy to kind of get rid of all of that line entirely and smooth over the surface, so you can never even know it was there with next to no effort. Now, if I was going to be getting an entire army prepped and I didn't care about every tiny little detail being perfectly clean, using a bigger tool like this will mean that that process will go quite a bit faster. Now, something smaller like this, I'm still going to be using on a much more regular basis as opposed to these big ones, but it's something that I'm kind of glad that I have in my hobby drawer to use and pull out when it's best applicable. Oh, maybe the orange one is good for these big burrs on the bottom of the feet that you don't really care about and you just want to get them off quick. Yeah, that actually makes really quick work of that. Yeah, I guess it does have some value. This thing definitely feels like a product that was meant for model kits or something like a larger Gundam, and I totally get the value and can see it for that. But for us, it just seems a little bit big and unwieldy for 90% of the work we would actually be using a product like this for. Now, when it comes to sanding, I often have a little strip of high grit sandpaper at my desk to get into those little cracks and crevices where like an arm meets the body and you can't really get in there. So when I saw in the box that they have this weird little waterproof sanding paper, am pretty intrigued. It seems like its job is going to be similar to this, but less floppy than standard sandpaper. As it says, the paper was soaked in resin and it is hard, so it can sand firmly with edge. Wet sanding is a technique often used in model kits, like model cars and model planes, where they actually wet the model or wet the sandpaper for a final buffing that gets so incredibly smooth that when they spray paint on the actual color of the vehicle, it is like a real car, and then it's absolutely kind of mirror shine smooth. I'm guessing that's what these are for. Now, upon first evaluation, it seems actually slightly firmer than the standard sandpaper, but not incredibly firm like I would have imagined when I pictured them being dipped in resin prior to being able to purchase them. Just dip that in a bit of water. Okay, I can see where it's waterproof. The water is almost slightly beading up on the sandpaper as opposed to kind of soaking in as if the backing was just pure cardboard or paper. Oh yeah, this is like super smooth. It even feels much more smooth than the actual plastic on an area that's supposed to be smooth, like this part of the clothes. So if you've got mold lines, and using a bit of this right over that will really not only take away the mold line, but it makes it super smooth. That's pretty cool. I can definitely see the value of a product like this in something like Gundam or in model kit building, where that super smooth finish is the most important thing as you're putting down super glossy enamel paint over the top, and it would highlight any imperfections in the plastic. For us, when we're painting layers upon layers of color over the model, the paint is going to be building on top of each other, and this seems a little bit less necessary for what we do. Today's video is brought to us by Ghostfire Gaming and their amazing new Kickstarter, Grim Hollow Valakin Clans. I'm currently in the midst of creating my own custom campaign with the original Grim Hollow book, and let me tell you, the depth of new mechanics, amazing world and history detail, and super unique monsters, subclasses, and abilities are so damn good. Grim Hollow Valakin Clans takes place in the same world of Atharis, but far to the north, where diplomacy and bloodshed are a way of daily survival for clansfolk. Valakin Clans has so much rich content it can't be confined to a single book. And when you see all the new subclasses, in-depth raiding mechanics, clan affiliation rules, new transformations, and a bunch of standalone dungeons, you'll know why. The Kickstarter also has a ton of amazing add-ons, including some sick-looking minis. And while it's plug and play with D&D 5e, I'm running my Grim Hollow campaign in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I found it super easy to tweak for any game system. The Kickstarter ends in just 1 week from today, so make sure you click on the link below and check out Grim Hollow Valakin Clans, and you can start creating your own story for how your clan rises to domination. All right, that was all the stuff in the box as related to building of the models. Everything else is actually related to the painting of the models, and this stuff seems the most interesting and kind of weird. First up is this little weird pad of what looks like paper or like a packet of sticky notes. That's honestly what I thought it was when I first opened the package. It seems like it's just a dry palette. So if you don't use the dry palette and you put your paintbrush right on the model, the paint will go everywhere. But if you dab it off on this paper first, you get much more control. Sure, it is a sound practice to make sure that you wick off your paintbrush first prior to putting it on the model itself. Otherwise, the paint goes everywhere. So I'm not going to contend that that actual process is important, but let's see how good this piece of paper is at doing it. As long as we're going to do a little testing with paint, we might as well use the starter paintbrush set that's included in this kit. And oh my God, they are the tiniest little brushes I've ever seen. Look how tiny those tips are. I hope you don't paint anything that's larger than the size of a pinhead, because it's going to take you all day. Oh look, it says semi-pro for the semi-pros. Since we're going to be painting with the world's tiniest tip brush, we may as well don our sexy gogs. Now, one area that is really important to make sure that you have full control and you don't have an overloaded brush is doing edge highlighting. It actually has a bit more paint on the brush than I wish it did, which is weird because the brush is fairly small and the tip is pretty tiny, and I wicked it off, but when I hit the edge, it makes a fatter line than I want. Now to compare, I'm going to try the same thing, but first I'm just going to roll it through my paper towel, just barely, and then on the back of my hand, and then attempt the same process. Once I just use the back of my hand method, I have a lot more control and I can get a lot crisper line than I could by using the piece of paper. The 3 other brushes included in this set are a super tiny short bristle brush, this wider brush which is good to kind of paint big sections of a model quickly, and then this weird thing that it feels kind of like it's a dry brush, but it's made out of like super firm nylon bristles and almost scratchy at the tip, like it's going to scratch your model when applying paint. I don't think I'd ever touch this thing to an actual model. It is going to probably tear up the layers of paint you have underneath and the primer and probably still scratch the plastic. I really don't understand this paper at all. Like, it's smooth, it's just like paper. It's worthless. This here is a box of brush care sheets, and I wasn't sure what this one was used for either. And on the back it says, use Bemleys, the world's only cellulose filament nonwoven sheet. Filament is nearly circular and less damage to brush when you wipe. High liquid absorption thanks to cotton-based material, soft and gentle, perfect nonwoven sheet for brush. So is this supposed to be a replacement for paper towels? I don't know. Okay, it looks like a dryer sheet. I'm guessing it's for like cleaning off your brush after you've cleaned the paint off. Maybe you put it in the water and then you did this with it. Certainly doesn't seem to be any more protective or useful than a regular paper towel. Maybe in certain cultures or countries, paper towels aren't widely used or widely available, so you need a more specialty product like this. But any kind of kitchen roll or anything like that is the exact same thing for what I'm sure is a fraction of the price. All right, now we're on to the big one. This is the one that got me the most excited because of its pure ridiculousness, as well as its potential to actually be useful in miniature painting. And this would be the thumb palette. What it does is in the name. It's a little palette you put on your thumb. And it comes with these cute little pieces of palette paper. Put on the water. Rub around the water. Put down the paper. See, I assume it'll stick because the paper will get damp, which is what we need. We want it to be a damp sheet of paper. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of working. Put some paint on here. First thing we're going to do is try it as an actual palette with a drop of paint. There's no way that this is going to go poorly, right? Add a little water to our palette. Thin down that paint a little bit. It is convenient to just kind of like have it there. And you can just kind of grab it. And then you can start painting, and then you can go back to it. I actually don't mind the feeling of having this here. It is so close. It doesn't feel like it's messing with me painting at all. It doesn't really seem to get in my way at all. Oh God, the whole thing came up. All right, this is a whole short grip set. So it's a bunch of brushes that have teeny tiny grips. They're about half the size of a standard length of a paintbrush. As a bonus, this comes with a elementary school pencil case to put all of your hobby products in. Sweet. All right, look at this little son of a bitch. He's so tiny. He's so freaking small. Now, I don't exactly have monstrous hands, but how the hell am I gonna hold this thing? A big part of control with a paintbrush is that it can rest here between your thumb and your pointer finger, and that gives you a point of stability. Now, all in all, actually holding the brush like this feels fairly comfortable, and like I have a good bit of control. I'm not feeling like there's things I can't do with holding the brush this way compared to how I normally do, so that's a bit of a surprise. I think just the fact that it's held firmly, right, pushed up against the palm of my hand leads to a nice controlled area, and the quality of the tip of this brush is actually pretty solid. I'm stinking disappointed in this little thumb palette. You know, I dreamed that you could just do all the greatest little blendings and have access to everything on your thumb, and it's more of a pain in the ass than it feels actually a valuable tool. I prefer that this be a nice small little wet palette so it actually had the paper stay wet. It seems like the technology is there that we could do that. No one's done it yet, but this is not that. See, I'm gonna blame all of the issues that I have with anything of the painting of this model on all these tools and not my lack of painting knowledge and skill. Well, with that, we got a portion of a model built and a little bit of a model painted after testing all of these Japanese products. I'm going to be honest, none of this stuff was all that exciting or useful. I don't think I'll implement any of it. That's not to say it's not super valuable or useful products for other hobbies, maybe for Gundam or for model building, but none of them here jumped out to me as something I really like. But is there other things from different hobbies that you do like? Anything else that you've tried and it's been successful? I want to hear about it in the comments below. If so, I might try it out and test it out myself. It's always good, whether you find something that works or doesn't, to have gone through the process. And I feel like if I tested these things and none of it seemed good to me, well, maybe it'll save you a few hobby dollars from testing it out yourself. Or maybe you like some of this stuff. If you like any of these things and you use them on the regular, tell me, did I test it out incorrectly, or I'm just dumb? All likely. Thanks for hanging out all the way to the end of the video. You that do so, I appreciate the most. If you want to support me in additional ways, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can also head on over to my website and see all of the gear that I use on a regular basis. I've got a full list of everything on my website, and there are affiliate links so you can support the channel a little bit. Also, I've got a Patreon, so you can hang out with me on Discord. You can see my weekly vlog videos and a bunch of other fun rewards. So check out my Patreon link below. I'm going to see you back here again real soon, and sometime between now and then, make sure you find time in your day to use some weird tools and slay the gray. I'll test it out and see if anything's good for my regular hobby daily work life. Fuck me in the goat ass. I need piece 96.